The material contained in the Diverging Clear Podcast is for informational purposes only. The ideas and opinions expressed in the podcast does not represent the views or missions of the National Rail Passenger Corporation or Amtrak or the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission. This is the Diverging Clear Podcast.
Approach diverging, milepost 20.04. Diverging clear, milepost 20.06. Welcome to Diverging Clear, your transportation podcast, with your hosts William Moore and Jermaine Walker. And welcome to episode 10 of the Diverging Clear Podcast. As in the words of Marvin Gaye, the title of this episode is What's Going On? I'm your host, William Moore, and I'd first like to say thank you for tuning in. And also don't forget to click the like and subscribe button for this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Anchor, and any other platform that you listen to or watch your favorite podcasts. First off, I want to say thank you for everyone that's tuned in this first season of the Diverging Clear podcast. I know it's been a little bit of time since I put out my last episode. Had a lot of changes in my rail career here. I took a promotion at Amtrak, moved up from yard master to a manager of train operations, working at the Chicago Control Center now. So kind of took us had to take a step back to get my head on straight to move into the new role. It's kind of a role that I've held before with the EJ&E, some very similar position, but just getting my feet back under me, my dispatching feet back under me, and getting accustomed to the rules and getting caught up to date with everything. So I said I apologize about the long delay, but certain things had to take place in order for me to be able to transition into this new role. And of course, I'm still maintaining my role as Chief Executive Officer at EME Rail Solutions, LLC. So it's just been a lot of stuff going on, a lot of positive things going on. But just want to say thank you for tuning in, subscribing, sharing. And hopefully this last episode will give you a little bit of something else to share. Been talking with my other partner, my co-host, Jermaine Walker. We're already coming up for with ideas for season number 2. So this isn't the series finale. This is the season finale, and we already putting together some good stuff for season 2, which will probably launch here. We'll probably take about a month or two off. Hopefully by that time, an infrastructure bill will be passed. We'll see about that. I'll discuss that here in a second. But got a lot of new stuff coming up. A little bit of we may change the format. We'll look at some things. But like I said, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. And hopefully we can grow this audience for people that's interested in this topic of transportation policy, railroads. And, hopefully I've been able to bring you some good content here. And hopefully I'll be able to do the same moving forward. So just want to say thank you again. And let's go ahead and get this started. So, first off, so let me put this out there. I held off on this episode thinking that some type of infrastructure bill, as I just mentioned,
would have passed the House Senate and been signed by President Biden. I also would have been analyzing the content of that bill. I was hoping to have my last episode wrapping up my first season on a good note. However, Congress is Congressing. I'll say that again. Congress is Congressing, meaning they're doing their SOP, standard operating procedure of just delay, and hoping that everybody gets tired of it, and then when they don't pass anything, nobody says anything. But hopefully we'll have a different outcome this time, but we'll see. But as Congress continues to Congress, we have no infrastructure bill yet. And hell, the government was on the verge of a shutdown, but they finally passed a temporary stay on the debt ceiling, at least through December. So we'll probably be replaying the drama with the debt ceiling again here as Christmas approaches. But we'll see. But the whole thing is it comes down to this out-of-date Senate rule, the filibuster, holding everything up. But I don't even know if the filibuster would even help with the way we have a couple Democratic senators that's just determined to be a anchor in progress. Won't mention them by name, Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, but I digress. So as we get going here, first story I want to cover here is the KCS acquisition. Now, if you follow me on my social media, I kind of created a series following this KCS saga and drama, but I like to call my railroad soap opera called As the Railroads Merge. The fight for KCS literally has had so many twists and turns between the Canadian Pacific and the Canadian National. I literally had to create my own drama series on Twitter and IG for it. By the way, follow me at the Diverging Clear Podcast and at EME_Rail LLC on IG and Diverging Clear 1 on Twitter. If you check out my social media, you can follow along. With that being said, on September 12th, KCS declared that CP's latest offer was superior. But why, after all this drama, would the KCS finally accept CP's offer? Well, put it simply, because the Surface Transportation Board denied CN's application to establish a voting trust until regulatory approval was granted for the acquisition. In other words, when they said no to the voting trust, that killed any chances CN had of acquiring KCS. So as I mentioned here, with the denial, the CN offer became a moot point, and CP's revised offer was accepted by KCS. According to the train's press release on September 13, 2021, KCS Kansas City Southern yesterday announced that its board determined that Canadian Pacific's revised proposal constitutes a company superior proposal as defined in KCS merger agreement with CN. Under the terms of CP's proposal, each share of KCS common stock will be exchanged for 2.884 CP common shares and $90 in cash. In addition, holders of KCS preferred stock will receive $37.50 in cash for each share, and KCS preferred stock for each share of KCS preferred stock held, according to the KCS press release. This totals about this makes the acquisition worth about $31 billion. And when you add upon KCS's current debt of an additional $2 billion, the total transaction will be worth $33 billion. The proposal is binding on CP and may be accepted by KCS at any time prior to 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, September 20th, which is passed, and they accepted the offer. The transaction will be subject to approval by the stockholders of CP and KCS, receipt of regulatory approvals, and other customary closing conditions. KCS has notified CN that it intends to terminate its merger agreement and enter into
the definitive agreement with CP, subject to CN's right to negotiate amendments to the merger agreement for at least 5 business days, and KCS board's further determination as to whether such amendments would change the superior proposal designation. Just to tell you, it didn't. So all of that other stuff, jargon, was kind of a moot point because KCS, that time came and went, and KCS did accept the offer. So in the grand scheme of things, KCS was a better fit into the CP's network. I'll bring up a map here of what the KCS CP map would look like. So as you can see from this image here, the KCS and CP merger would extend the Canadian Pacific network from coast to coast, from Vancouver to Halifax and on the Canadian side, down through Kansas City, all the way down to Veracruz, Mexico, just south of Mexico City. And I always mess that port name up, so I'm not going to even attempt to say it. But as you can see, the CP's network this changes the dynamic of the Canadian Pacific's network tremendously. They link every major region of the, let me get this the new agreement name correct. The former NAFTA countries, I'll just call it that just for simplicity. But the former NAFTA countries, Mexico, United States of America, and Canada, are now all linked by one single railway through KCS and their subsidiary in Mexico, the KCS de Mexico. So with that being said, just one observation to me about when the Canadian National, the CN, attempted to derail CP's attempt to acquire KCS. To me, the CN's bid was petty because there were too many redundant routes that would have to either be spun off or would be abandoned because they would be redundant, especially in the Louisiana area. So to me, it just didn't. The price that the CN was offering just didn't seem like the synergies was going to pay off for that offer. And because of that very risky gamble for the CN, this has now kicked off a proxy fight that could cause tremendous shift in management from the top down. So one of the CN's major stakeholders, who's also a major stakeholder in Canadian Pacific, has launched a proxy fight to replace the current several members of the board of directors and the CEO of the Canadian National. So this fallout from the CN attempt to steal the KCS away from the CP, we have not seen the end of it. It's just beginning. So we'll see what dominoes fall and what takes place with this failed merger on the Canadian National side. Like I said, to me, it just didn't make sense for the CN to attempt this. A lot of money is going to be lost in the process of this, their value. I guess they'll recoup some of the costs, but it just didn't make sense. It just didn't seem, and it seemed highly unlikely that they would ever get regulatory approval for the simple fact of the redundant routes that would be created down in a very vital, important part of the Gulf Coast, the chemical coast area of in Baton Rouge and the southern part of Louisiana. It just didn't make sense, and it just, with the total climate of everything going on, it just never seemed like that this was gonna ever get the current STB's approval, especially with how the current global supply chain is literally on the brink of collapse right now. And this was not going to be something, if it was in the Canadian National hands, that was going to enhance the supply chain. It was going to probably cause a detriment to it, which is probably the exact reason why the STB voted to not allow the voting trust, which in turn put CP back into play to acquire the Kansas City Southern. So we'll see how all this plays out.
It's going to be interesting moving forward. Um, I hope that the KCS CP come up with a better name than what they've been announcing, but I'm pretty sure they will. But that's the least of the words. That's just the real fan in me that would like to see a better name than Canadian Pacific Kansas City Southern. So that's just me. But anyway, I'm going to take a short commercial break to hear from our sponsors. Don't forget to click the subscribe and like button on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, or whatever platform you're using to enjoy the podcast. If you like the show, be sure to leave us a positive review. I'll be right back. Talk to you soon.
Diverging Clear is sponsored by EME Rail Solutions LLC. We don't own rail cars, locomotives, or tracks, but if you do, we provide cutting edge solutions to maximize your assets. Visit us at emerail.net to learn more. Diverging Clear is also brought to you by Three Kings Freight Brokerage LLC. Visit Three Kings Freight Brokerage LLC.com to learn more about their services.
And welcome back to the Diverging Clear Podcast. I'm your host, William Moore. And now that we got that KCS mess out of the way, we can now focus on how our global and national supply chains are being ravaged by port congestion on both of our respective coasts. It's gotten so bad that Home Depot and now Costco have chartered smaller ships and leased containers to avoid the super high shipping costs and get products they need on the shelves. Back in mid July, news broke about the Union Pacific suspending service between the West Coast and their Global 4 Gateway terminal in the Chicago area. According to the press release, this is an effort to improve congestion at the Inland Intermodal Terminal. The suspension of service was scheduled to last a week. The following week, the BNSF announced that it was going to begin metering traffic between the West Coast and Chicago to deal with congestion at its Midwestern Gateway, according to a notice from the ocean carrier MSC and a confirmation from the railroad. MSC said that metering took effect Sunday, July 18th and will last for 2 weeks. Both of these stories are from supplychaindive.com. One update to this story is that the UP reopened its Global 3 intermodal terminal in suburban Chicago, and the NS added capacity to its Landers terminal in Chicago and reopened an intermodal facility in Pennsylvania that was shut down in 2019. So now you look at this, and I started to discuss a couple points of things. Just on my LinkedIn page, I was kind of posed a question out there about, is this congestion being caused by the PSR, precision scheduled railroading practices? Is this exasperating the congestion, or is PSR actually being flexible enough to adjust to this onslaught of traffic? So I did get a response from one of my connections on LinkedIn. It was a very interesting response, and it made me give some perspective to. We like to blame PSR for a lot of things. For every time something goes wrong, first thing comes out of everybody's mouth is PSR. But he made a very valid point, and the point that he made was that it doesn't matter how many containers they move or drop at a terminal. If those containers don't have anywhere to go, meaning if they don't have drivers, if customers don't have drivers to pick them up, if the warehouses don't have space to unload the containers or the traffic, then that presents a unique bottleneck for the railroads, because now the railroads, where they're used to goods moving on a pretty scheduled basis, now there's just no room for anything to move. If the down chain side of the supply chain, or down the line side of the supply chain is bottled up, and you don't have people to unload the trucks. A lot of these problems were exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you don't have people at work, if you don't have drivers to move the goods, if you don't have people to unpack the goods, if you don't have the capacity, the warehouse capacity to store the goods, and with the explosion of e-commerce during the pandemic, due to everything being shut down and for safety precautions, it causes a problem that even if you had just standard railroading, it would not help the supply chain issue. So, with that being said, I had to take a different look, a different approach to it, and understand that this is much more. This is a much larger problem than PSR. And I had to eat that and say, yeah, you're right. You do have to take those other variables into account, because the simple fact is that the pandemic boosted e-commerce to numbers that no one could have predicted, even in the long outlet forecasting for intermodal traffic and domestic or international imports. No one could have predicted that this type of pandemic would cause this type of explosion in e-commerce that nobody was prepared for. Um, some of the ports which were planned, 5, 10 years in advance, like down in Savannah and Charleston, South Carolina, they were in the process of opening new expanded capacity, but that stuff, it just happened to come online at the right time. It was a perfect plan. They couldn't have planned it any better. But even with that additional capacity at those ports, it's still not helping the supply chain move at all, because you still have other elements of it that are just stretched beyond capacity. So one thing you can blame PSR for a lot of things, but PSR is not the sole um, culprit for this supply chain breakdown that we're currently experiencing right now, not just in America but across the globe. So one thing I did want to bring up is that they were a couple of these articles were talking about the amount of storage fees and how the Union Pacific and BNSF were charging these what some people were saying exorbitant storage charges. Um, so what this was causing was that due to the high storage fees that were being charged for containers sitting over X amount of hours. And this, so you know that these storage fees and charges are not regulated by the Surface Transportation Board. So they're pretty much free to charge what they want and how they want to charge it. But with the unprecedented volumes and terminal congestion, the shippers can't go and pick up their containers at some of these congested terminals because of high storage fees that are owed to release the container. So now it's like, is the congestion being caused? Is congestion self-inflicted, or is it exasperated by these practices? This could be a whole nother episode of Diverging Clear Podcast in the making, but we'll see how this works out. So with that being said, that they were charging these additional fees, and for good reason, and I understand both sides of the argument. Both sides of the argument is saying, well, if we can't afford the release fees, how are we going to clear your terminal? And then on the other side, the railroads are saying, well, if we don't put those high fees in there, you guys will leave it here, and you'll still cause congestion. So both sides have a very valid point, but since this has come out, a lot of things have changed, and some of the fluidity is coming back. but we still have we're nowhere near out of the out of the danger zone. The global supply chain is still on the verge of collapse, and it said it's the American choke point isn't helping. So we need to see how this plays out. One other thing I wanted to kind of mention in regards to this was there was an article that former BNSF executive Matt Rose wrote in 2000, or that Matt Rose warned about in 2019. So this is what Mr. Rose had to say regarding the PSR and some of the things that were coming. So according to the Trains article, this is dated July 22nd, 2021, in Trains. Before he retired in 2019, BNSF Railway Executive Chairman Matt Rose warned that the other Class 1 railroads were inviting regulatory risks by adopting precision scheduled railroading, reducing service, and demarketing some types of traffic in pursuit of higher profits. We have this common carrier obligation to provide freight service to all customers in all markets, Rose told an industry conference in January 2019. And what we're doing in PSR is we're redefining what we're willing to accept in the freight rail industry on certain lanes. And I really do believe we're going to get in a lot of trouble by doing that. When you start redefining markets, Rose warned, I think the federal policymakers will look at this, and quite frankly, they will not be happy with us. That day of reckoning is here. Last week, this is the week of July, this would have been the week of July 15th. Last week, Surface Transportation Board Chairman Marty J. Oberman questioned whether railroads are shirking their common carrier obligations due to pressure from Wall Street. And this is Mr. Oberman saying, I have wondered whether the combination of reductions in workforce, interruptions in service, the marketing of all implicate the common carrier obligation that railroads have and have had really since the beginning of the railroad industry. Oberman told the Midwest Association of Rail Shippers, and it's something that I continue to focus my attention on. Oberman said he fully supports the White House call for increased competition in the rail industry. The Biden administration's July 9th executive order, which aims to limit the dominance of large corporations, dovetails with efforts already underway at the STB. They are just many parts of the country where there's just not real effective competition among rail carriers, Oberman said. The STB chief says his agency will take a look at a hot button issue like reciprocal switching, lifting exemptions on regulation of certain commodities, and ways to more easily settle rate disputes. Also, Mr. Oberman said, what we don't know, of course, is what shape regulatory reform ultimately may take at the STB. The devil is in the details, but it's clear that Oberman is likely to get the ball rolling and that the Class 1s won't like it much. So what this comes from is just basically Matt Rose was just expounding his frustration with how the common carrier obligation is going by the wayside in order to basically appease Wall Street investors that have no full-term or long-term interest in the health and of our transportation network. All they're worried about is net profit for the short term, and then bailing out and then leaving the rail industry in shambles. So that's what Mr. Rose was speaking of there, is that was his concern, and he was pretty spot on when he said that the federal regulators are going to start to take notice to that too. So with that being said, he was just trying to say, like, look, we understand that we have to make money, but we also have to have an understanding that in the process of being given the right to make money, we also have an obligation to provide this service to any and all markets, and that's not what we're doing right now because of PSR.
So, with that being said, I completely understood where Mr. Rose was coming from. I don't know if the industry is taking heed or not, but I can tell you some things have shifted. As I mentioned, that the NS reopened the Pennsylvania um, intermodal facility that was closed due to PSR to their PSR plan. I can't remember the exact name of it, but they didn't see the facility as being needed. But now with this additional traffic and this congestion, they were in position to reopen the facility similar to what the Union Pacific did by reopening Global 3 in Rochelle, Illinois. So a lot of these things are fluid, which I did like the fact that the PSR did allow for these facilities to be easily reopened. But then it comes the question is, should they have ever been closed in the first place? We can argue about that, but that'll be a different episode, maybe next season. So, wrapping this up, I just want to bring up a couple things here before we get out of here. Um, I don't know if you any of you guys are familiar with the forecast and how they've been predicting that the over the next, well, this would have been, I believe this study came out in the early 2000s, that by 2040 intermodal and freight traffic would increase by, I think, anywhere from 40 to 50% of what we see and what they were seeing at that time. Well, one thing I want to say about that is we're seeing that rise. We're seeing that increase. We saw the increase, and I think they may have called that forecast a little bit short because we're almost at the levels that they predicted we would reach by 2040, 2050. We're already at those levels in 2021. So this is just part of the process. The forecasts have been pretty accurate, but it happened a lot sooner than later. So whereas we thought we had 20 to 30 years to prepare for this boom, it's not quite the case. So excuse me. So as we look at this, these are just my closing thoughts on this topic. So why we needed to prepare our infrastructure logistics network for this growth. Well, like I said, that study that I mentioned is probably about 10 or 15 years old, and we're quickly approaching the second decade of that forecast. We knew this was going to happen, we just didn't know exactly when and why. The COVID-19 pandemic jettisoned e commerce to a level that no one could have predicted or forecasted. So, what are we, America, going to do about it? Are we going to pass a robust infrastructure bill? I'm not just talking about physical infrastructure either. Every component of our physical and human infrastructure is critical to solving this supply chain issue. Are we going to stop? Are we going to stop with this partisan politicking and finally get something done? Well, right now the entire hangup is cost, which in itself is silly. As global shipping rates have risen from an average of $1,400 to $1,500 per container to an excess of $20,000 per container, that rises the price of everything we purchase. This is a major source of our inflation, not the fact that our federal government provided a safety net for its citizens during the global pandemic. A lot of people try to say, well, the cost of inflation is going up because there's excess money out there. No, the cost of goods are going up because of the shipping rates have gone up. As you can see, I can't even put that into a monetary percentage amount, but $1,400 to $1,500 over. In some cases, I've seen quotes $24,000 for one container. That's where your cost of inflation is. That's what's driving the inflation for and the high prices of everything right now. So, with that being said, just one other note that I, kind of want to express here, and this is what I always talk about. We do a lot of kicking the can in America where, well, we'll do it next time. Well, we'll do it next time. Well, we'll do it next time. Well, Had Congress kept a steady stream of funding for infrastructure over the past 30 years, the cost wouldn't be so high right now. Literally, it would not be. But we went through feast and famine stages, mostly famine, for our infrastructure where we wasn't keeping it up to date. Where instead of modernizing, we would patchwork or just wouldn't do anything to it. So now that all of that kicking the can has gotten down the road, it's the simple fact that we could have been doing something about this on a continuous basis, but because of for one reason or another, we just couldn't. Well, I'm not going to say we. Our Congress and our president and our branches of government just completely just failed America on its own year after year. And so now it's time to we always were robbing Peter to pay Paul in these situations. Now it's time to pay Peter. We robbed him all these years and now it's time to pay him. And so we're arguing over whether or not we should do this or not. Well, we've been arguing over this for 30 years. If we wait another 30 years, we're going to be so much further behind the eight ball and trying to get caught up with the things, the necessities that we need to grow our economy, to grow our nation, that at some point in time, it's got to stop. We can't keep kicking it down the road. We've kicked it down the road long enough. We still got the city of Flint that still has lead in their pipes. You know, their drinking water still isn't safe to drink. Come on, it's 2021. What are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing? You still have parts of the nation, urban areas and rural areas that don't have high-speed internet, don't even have access to it. It's not even an option. So how are we growing as a nation when people don't even have the basic resources, high-speed internet, to conduct their businesses, to get an education, and we have dead zones in America? Why is that? It makes absolutely no sense. No sense is no excuse for us to be like this as a nation concerning our physical and human infrastructure. You know, I was watching a recent story, and they were talking about the city of Cleveland. I believe it was on the Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. And they were breaking down how the city of Cleveland has when the pandemic started and they shut down the public schools, how many areas didn't even have access for their students to be able to log on to high-speed internet to be able to conduct their classes. It was in and out, and the internet connection was barely, if any, Wi-Fi or anything, so these students could learn. And that was a city, an example of a city. But then you had other parts of the country that's just literally no high-speed internet. So even if their school shut down, there's no way they can do anything online because they don't have access to it. And that makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. So with me saying that, in my closing, I just want to say, we need to take a look at what we're really doing. There's tons of opportunities out here, but we got to have the will to do the right thing. We haven't done the right thing for so long. And to me, that's frustrating. We're supposed to be the richest, greatest nation on this planet, but we can't get simple things done. And why is that? There's no excuse for it. Right now we have a couple people with all the power, and it makes no sense because they are literally dragging everyone else down. And until we get some of these things corrected, we're going to continue to slip and slide to the back of the pack in every aspect of our lifestyles. The great shining beacon on the hill, that light's going out, and it's going out quickly. And we got to do something about it, do something big about it, and it's quick. There's a lot of great things out here, a lot of great potentials, but we just got to get past this cost because it's costing us more not to do anything than it would to invest in our people and invest in our things to help make this country great. So with that being said, I really don't like to get real political and stuff, but it's just so frustrating to see so many opportunities that we have here to improve our lives of everyone, not just a selected few, but everyone. And we're choosing not, and we have a couple people literally holding up progress. So with that being said, that'll be a wrap for episode 10, season 1 of the Diverging Clear podcast. Once again, I would just like to say thank you, thank you for supporting me. Hopefully we can grow the number of people following and watching and getting information. I'll continue to bring the content. I absolutely enjoy doing this. I'll look at some different ways to engage and interact with subscribers and followers, and take take ideas and see what we can do to grow this. A lot of the things that I talk about them because they directly affect the lifestyles of every single American. People don't realize how much infrastructure transportation plays into equity in this country, or equality in this country. I'm sorry, equality in this country. Equal access to to movement of goods, people. It creates a equality of life, for life, for everyone that's allowed to embrace and have access to these different things, not just a selected few, but everyone. So my big thing is that, like I said, I don't like to get too political. I just like to state the facts, but these are some facts that are playing into the decision making, which I try to enlighten people on it, help them understand what is their role, how does this affect them. If I'm not clear in answering that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at the Diverging Clear Podcast at gmail.com. It's all one word, Diverging Clear Podcast at gmail.com. And if I don't know the answers, I'll get the answers and we'll talk about it. So, like I said, don't hesitate to reach out, send me comments, send me questions, give me feedback, give me, I'm here. I'm here to try to provide a service for everyone, and just keep people apprised on what's going on and the effects it has on a national level, and in some cases on a local level. So I'll continue to do that. Like I said, the last thing to do, just want to say is thank you again. I would love to. I'm just like to thank you for tuning in to the Diverging Clear podcast. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe button also for this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Anchor, and any other platform that you listen to or watch your favorite podcast. And like I said, mentioned before, you can also send comments and feedback to Diverging Clear Podcast at gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at Diverging Clear 1, on IG at Diverging_Clear_podcast, and on Facebook. Stay tuned for updates regarding Season 2. Have a great rest of 2021. Please stay safe out there. Stay masked up. This pandemic is not over yet, and I want to see everybody back for Season 2. So stay safe. God bless. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next season. Signing off. Thank you again.